Hello and welcome to Ascend in Action, the podcast that celebrates the future of women in staffing and consulting, brought to you by Amoria Group. In this podcast, we'll be talking and tackling some of the key topics when it comes to women in staffing and consulting, from why we need more women and what we bring to the industry, to our role in tackling gender bias and empowering and supporting each other. Presented by the Progressing Lives Everywhere podcast, these conversations are designed to inspire, engage, and show how together we can fulfill our potential and progress our lives. Welcome to the Ascend in Action podcast series, part of the Progressing Lives Everywhere podcast, brought to you by the Amoria Group. I'm Elizabeth Barnes, consultant based in CMC's Dallas office. In the 5th episode of the series, I'm delighted to be talking to Felicity Wingrove. Felicity is renowned as one of the UK's leading experts in the psychology of language. She's also qualified and certified women's empowerment coach and trainer. Excited to be speaking with you today, Felicity.
Oh, and likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, I'm excited to jump into the questions here in terms of how we're going to chat about females and confidence throughout the industry. First, I would love to start by just asking you how you define female confidence in sales.
It's a great question. And I think it's akin to female confidence anywhere, ultimately. We're looking at someone feeling really in their power, being really authentic, being themselves, feeling in control of the situation, feeling that they're able to shape the conversation as they need to, and that they're just building, developing rapport. You know, that lovely sweet spot, you'll know yourself, when you just feel as though you're on purpose and it's all going exactly as you'd intended and it's just smooth and it's effortless. That's what we really want for every woman in every professional role, but particularly when you're looking at a sales situation.
Awesome. So then with that, what types of strategies or practices have you found effective in building and maintaining confidence in women?
I think when it comes to building confidence, there's a recognition that if we're able to stand in our power, and I use that phrase quite a lot, stand in our power, but that means to really authentically be ourselves, not trying to mask, not trying to show up as a man or as another version of ourselves. Often we see with people earlier in their careers, they're trying to parody, they're trying to mimic one of their mentors, male or female. And actually that lack of congruence, it absolutely decimates your own confidence and how you're perceived. What I would say from a sort of strategic perspective, it's looking at how you can best build rapport. And from a neuroscience perspective, the majority of us will filter for sameness. So we're looking for someone who shares our values or has some commonality, something in common with us. And the more we can do that, we can find those points of connection, those lovely areas where you have something in common with the person that you're speaking with. The easier that communication will be, the more confident you as an individual will feel, and ultimately the more successful the outcome for both parties.
Yeah, I definitely see that in the conversations that I have in terms of individuals and within the workplace as well. Definitely think finding commonality is where you can then bring your confidence into the workplace. So that's incredible. Are there any misconceptions about female confidence in sales?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the biggies is around this idea of assertive or aggressive. So one of the things that I find, words can be really nuanced, but actually when we direct them at women as a descriptive, they can be really harmful. So this is women and men speaking about women. If they are particularly confident, they can be labeled aggressive. Whereas if a man were to act in the same way, use the same intonation, use the same framing or phraseology, almost entirely every time he would be considered assertive. And I think that's something we really need to bring awareness of and look to evolve in the more modern day. I think it's very difficult for women to come across as confident with when they're trying really hard not to be too much. I think we just need to be able to be free to be ourselves. But there's also a recognition that when we're speaking with somebody, everyone has their own preferences. If I try to be exactly the same as you in terms of how quickly you speak or how enthusiastic you are or how lyrical your voice and intonation are, I'm going to be inauthentic. But equally, I'm conscious that I'm a bit like a children's TV presenter. I get really excitable. I speak really quickly. And actually, there are clients that I work with who are very, very different. So I need to try and meet them a little bit where they are. And that, I think, from a confidence perspective, that really demonstrates confidence.
Totally. And then throughout organizations, how can we create a more empowering environment to be able to boost this confidence within women?
I think any organization that has a conversation with its female talent around communication and how they can take very deliberate control and command of how they converse, what they say, who they say it to, how they say it. Any organization that facilitates that is going to absolutely get the very best from their female talent. We're all brought up to believe that we should speak to someone how we would wish to be spoken to, and that's really well-meaning. It engenders empathy and it makes us kind. But it's the worst thing we can do. We need to speak to people how they would wish to be spoken to, and each and every one of us is perfectly unique. We have our own preferences, our own filters, our own way of looking at the world. And actually, as an organization, if you can train your female team to recognize their own preferences, to recognize those preferences in the other person, and then to have the skill set to be able to pivot authentically to meet that person where they need to be, that is really that sort of nirvana, that absolute sweet spot where you're going to have highly skilled, highly confident, highly effective female talent and leaders of the future.
That's incredible. I love the words pivot authentically and how to be able to pivot when your own confidence and moving the conversation in the way that you have intended or the way that it naturally flows. So that's incredible. So I know you brought up mentorship a little bit in one of the past questions we had, but what role does mentorship play in fostering confidence amongst women?
I think more than anything, it's not just mentoring in its straight sense, it's modeling. So I know that organizations I work with who have empowered females at the highest level have a significantly higher retention rate of younger women. So by younger, I mean younger in their career path, coming through and staying. And when we start to interrogate that, what we see is that they can see themselves. They can see themselves at the top. They can see themselves and they can see the path that they need to follow. And also they have somebody to whom they can look to be inspired, to understand what they need to do or say. Ideally, someone they can also go and have a conversation with who may have been where they are now. And this is separate to issues like maternity, for example. I know I've done a lot of work with organizations around their communications as staff members go on maternity leave. There's a huge drop in retention of people with young families in some of the sectors that I work in, unless there is mentorship and modeling in place. If you can see a female leader who is juggling family and work, for example, the statistics suggest that you are more than twice as likely to still be in that role in 12 months' time. And I think it just shows possibility and it shows an example to be set.
Exactly. That's incredible. Shows how individuals can make it to the place that they're looking up to. So I love that. In terms of advice, what advice would you give to aspiring women in sales who may be struggling with confidence within communication in general?
I think often when we struggle with confidence, it's because we don't feel authentic. And I keep laboring that point. But actually, when we stand in our power, we are our strongest and most authentic selves. So I would say really drill down. It's a time for self-awareness. Recognize what your strengths are and recognize where there are opportunities for development. And then go out and look to bridge those gaps. There are so many free resources now with YouTube, people putting out content on TikTok and other social media platforms, even LinkedIn. There's loads of really great advice and guidance in snippet form. And weave that in. Look look at your communication skills as the core to improved confidence, as the core to improved rapport, which will lead to improved confidence, and also to more effectiveness in your day-to-day role. And look at communication as a muscle. And in much the same way as we would go to the gym, we would develop a fitness plan, and we would stick to that, and we would regularly work out before we expected to really start to see a physical difference. When it comes to communication, it's very similar. We need to hone our skills, and we need to keep practicing them and bringing more and more awareness. And to start with, it can feel a lot. You might be aware of the words that you're using. You might be thinking about your intonation, how speedy you are speaking, how lyrical your voice, your volume. You might also be thinking about hand gestures and physicality. It's a bit like trying to drive a manual car, or a stick shift, as you guys would call it over in the US. The first time you do that, it feels impossible. There's too many things to do. But actually, if you learn and if you practice, within a matter of weeks, the likelihood is you'll drive to your destination and not even be consciously aware of the moves that you're making to get there.
Incredible way to say it. Is there anything that you do specifically to help think and foster your communication skills and make them better for the future?
Just always learning. So I've been doing this for 25 years now, and I learn from every single client that I work with. The deeper that you can understand someone else's motivation, their preferences, the window on the world, so how they see all of the experiences around them, I add all of that data, I kind of take it in, and I add all of that to the groundswell of information that I already have. And it allows me to be just a tiny bit more nuanced the very next time I'm delivering a message. So it's very different if you're in a one-to-one situation and you're having that communication to if you were presenting to a group of 2,000 people. But the point is, as professionals, we need to be able to do both. And so for me, it's just about it's learning. It's being really curious about other people and what really motivates them.
That's incredible. And then finally, what trends do you see for the future of communication?
See, I think it's fascinating. We are in such exciting times with the advent and the just mass use of AI. What we're finding is that kind of lower level of communication is very rapidly being taken over by some automation or AI led, even down to things like scripting. So what I think we're going to see is a polarization, the majority of the heavy day-to-day work being done by AI, but there being a real niche at the top of nuanced language, really psychologically resonant language and communication. So we talk about ethical influence and persuasion being one of the outcomes, particularly from a sales perspective. How can I ethically ensure that you do what will be a win for both of us? Buy my product, engage with my service, whatever that might be. Actually, some of those initial conversations will be carried out by computers, by AI. That very top level, I think we're going to get to a point of that where we're going to need that human to human interaction. And that's kind of where I see it going. And it's exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. So many new things to come in the future. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great speaking with you, Felicity. And thanks for sharing all your insights and experiences with us. Great having you on the show. If anyone is looking to start a career in recruitment or wants to learn more about the industry, be sure to check out amoriabond.com. Thank you for listening to Ascend in Action, brought to you by Amoria Group. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, like, and leave a review. Every time you do, it helps others to find the show. Amoria Group are committed to walking the talk, and through our recruitment brand, Amoria Bond, and consultancy, Coalesce Management Consulting, we work hard to create a positive and inclusive environment for everyone. For further details on Amoria Group and how we are progressing lives everywhere, head over to amoriagroup.com. See you next time.